The townsfolk of Green Hollow never walked past the Riddle House after sundown. Even the wind seemed to hesitate there, whispering secrets that only the dead could understand. The house stood on a crooked hill, its roof sagging like a mouth half open in disbelief, as if it had seen too much and refused to close. For decades, no one dared to buy it. Every few years, the real estate agent would nail a fresh for sale sign into the front yard, and every few years, it would vanish overnight, burned, torn, or buried in the dirt. Rumor said the house didn't like being advertised. But one fall evening, a woman named Clara Bell arrived from the city, clutching a letter she claimed was from her late grandfather, the previous caretaker of the Riddle House. The letter simply said, "Finish what I couldn't. Let them rest." At first, Clara thought it was some poetic riddle from an old man losing his mind. But as she pushed open the front door, the hinges groaned like something alive. The smell of formaldehyde and wilted roses filled her nostrils. The Riddle House wasn't just a home. It was once a funeral parlor. Inside, everything was frozen in time. Coffin stands still lined the back room, and faded photographs of grieving families watched from the walls. Yet, what chilled her most was the sound of quiet sobbing echoing from the basement. It was faint, almost polite, like someone weeping behind their own hands. Clara gripped her flashlight tighter. "Hello," she called, her voice trembling. The sobbing stopped. She forced herself down the narrow basement stairs. The air grew colder with each step, and by the time she reached the bottom, her breath came out in mist. In the corner, an old mortician's table sat beneath a flickering light bulb. A half-burned candle stood beside it, and then she saw it. A coffin, open, dusty, empty, except for a note pinned inside. "Do not close this coffin until the last name is spoken." There was a list beneath it, names scratched in ink, one after another. Eleanor Riddle, Peter Riddle, Thomas Riddle. The last space was blank. Clara's flashlight flickered again. Then, a voice whispered behind her ear, soft but sharp. "You came back for us, Clara." She spun around. No one was there. The air thickened, and she caught the faint scent of lavender, the same perfume her grandmother used to wear. The shadows seemed to pulse, moving with a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. When she climbed back upstairs, the front door was closed, even though she had left it wide open. Every mirror in the house was fogged, as though someone had been breathing on them. She wiped one clean, and for a split second, she saw not her own reflection, but a room full of mourners standing behind her, black veils, hollow eyes, and lips whispering in unison. The last funeral isn't over. Clara stumbled back. When she looked again, the mirror was empty. That night, she slept in her car, too afraid to stay inside. But at exactly 3:03 a.m., her car horn blared on its own, waking her. Through the windshield, she saw the house windows glowing with a faint amber light, and shadows pacing slowly behind the curtains. She tried to start the engine. It wouldn't turn. Then she heard a knock. 3 gentle taps on the driver's window. Tap, tap, tap. She turned, and there stood a man in a black funeral suit, soaked as though he had been standing in rain. His eyes were gray, lifeless. He mouthed something through the glass. 3 words. "You left early." Clara screamed and bolted from the car, running toward the main road. The man didn't chase her, but as she looked back, the Riddle House door was wide open again, swinging slowly, almost invitingly. The next morning, she told the sheriff what had happened. He didn't laugh. He simply sighed and said, "You should have burned that letter." When she asked why, he told her story. The Riddle House used to handle the town's funerals, but one night, during a violent storm, a lightning strike cut the power mid-ceremony. The mortician lit candles and continued the service, unaware that one of the bodies wasn't actually dead. The man woke during burial, screaming inside his coffin, scratching his name onto the lid before dying for real. That was Thomas Riddle, the last name on the list. The sheriff said no one ever dared finish reading the names after that, afraid of calling the spirits back. But now, someone had, because Clara spoke them out loud in the basement. That evening, Clara stood outside the house again, the letter burning in her hand. The shadows inside seemed to twist, waiting. She could hear them now, hundreds of faint whispers rising from the floorboards. Finish what he couldn't. Let us rest. And as the wind picked up, the coffin downstairs creaked open. To be continued. When Clara returned to the Riddle House that night, the sky hung low and heavy. A thunderstorm crawled toward Green Hollow, rumbling like something ancient waking from sleep. She stood in the driveway, soaked by mist, her hands trembling around a lantern and the crumpled letter her grandfather had sent. The windows of the old funeral home glowed faintly. No electricity, no generator, yet each room shimmered like candlelight behind fog. The air tasted like salt and rot, and the smell of lilacs drifted from somewhere deep inside. Lilacs, the flower of funerals. She whispered to herself, "Finish what I couldn't. Let them rest." Pushing the door open, she was greeted by silence. Every photograph on the wall now faced her, every pair of eyes turned in her direction. The wallpaper peeled in strips, forming the shape of twisted faces, screaming without sound. The house knew she had come to finish it. Down the hallway, the basement door was ajar, faint light spilling out. With each step, the floorboards groaned like sighs of the dead. As she descended, she noticed the air was filled with something faintly humming, like a low choir of breathless voices. The coffin still waited at the center of the basement. The list of names lay atop it. Only one blank line remained. Her flashlight flickered twice, then died completely. The candle beside the coffin flared on its own, its flame bending toward her like a finger beckoning closer. "You came back," the whisper said again. But this time, it wasn't from behind her. It came from everywhere. She clenched her jaw. "I'm not afraid of you," she lied. From the dark corners of the room, shapes began to form. Pale outlines of mourners in black veils, each holding candles that burned with blue fire. They didn't move, only stared. One of them, a tall man in a funeral coat, stepped forward. His skin was gray, veins black and branching like roots beneath the surface. "You are not supposed to read the names," he said softly. "But you did." So the door opened. "What door?" Clara whispered. "The one that separates the mourners from the mourned." The ground trembled, and the lid of the coffin lifted slightly, just enough for a cold wind to rush out. The candle flames bent backward as the whispering voices swelled into a hiss of names, each syllable layered on top of another until it became unbearable noise. Then everything stopped. The man in the coat handed her a small, rusted pen. "One last name," he said. "Yours." Clara froze. "No, you are the last witness. Every caretaker must join the list. Only then does the service end." Her eyes widened as realization hit. Her grandfather's letter, his plea to finish what I couldn't. He had refused to sign, leaving her to do it. The pen felt alive in her hand, vibrating faintly. When she tried to drop it, her fingers wouldn't obey. Invisible hands held her wrist, guiding it toward the paper. Her vision blurred, her ears rang, and the candlelight pulsed with each beat of her heart. Then something changed. The mourners leaned closer, and from beneath their veils, their faces emerged, each one hollow, eyeless, with lips sewn shut. Yet their voices came through the stitches. "Write, and we will rest." Tears streamed down her face. "If I write it, what happens to me?" The man in black smiled, a motion that split his gray skin like paper. "You become what we were, keeper of the last funeral." The candle sputtered. Her breath quickened. She looked around for escape, but the basement walls now dripped like melting wax, closing in around her. Suddenly, she heard another voice, clear, human, soft. Her grandfather's. "It's all right, Clara. I stayed too long. Don't make the same mistake." She spun toward the sound. He stood in the corner, glowing faintly, wearing his old caretaker's apron, eyes full of sorrow. "Let it end," he said. "Say their names one last time, and then walk away." Clara understood. The list wasn't meant to be completed. It was meant to be erased. She took a deep breath, tore the paper in half, and threw it into the candle flame. The mourners screamed, dozens of wails layered like thunder. The coffin rattled violently, the lid slamming shut as a blast of cold wind filled the room. The candle burst, plunging everything into darkness. For a moment, All was silent. Then the whisper returned, fainter now, gentler. "Thank you." When Clara opened her eyes, she was outside. The storm had passed. The Riddle House stood still and quiet, the windows dark for the first time in decades. The air was clean, almost peaceful. She looked at the letter again. It was blank. The ink, the words, even the paper stains, all gone. Only a faint smell of lilac remained. She turned to leave, but paused. From a second-floor window, a faint silhouette stood watching her. A woman in black, holding a candle. And then it vanished. Some funerals never end. They only wait for someone to remember. The Riddle House is quiet now, but every October, a faint candlelight flickers from its basement window. Some say it's the dead, finally resting. Others say it's the new caretaker, waiting for another name to be written.